Hi everyone. Today is Purim, 5782, excuse me. And I'd like to show you two volumes of my library in honor of Purim, introduce you to two things that I have. The first is one of the great volumes, great Sepharim, on the Megillas Esther, on the scroll of Esther. The book is called Yosif Lekakh and was written by the great Rabbi Eliezer Ashkenazi. Eliezer Ashkenazi came from the Turkish or the Egyptian area, I think. He was born in the beginning of the 16th century. He's from the family of the Arizal. And he eventually was to move into Europe and was known as the Rabbi of Krakow in Poland. And I believe that's where he's buried. Um, he wrote his more famous volume is called Maaseh Hashem, and he wrote another volume on the Megillah, and it's one that I like very much. Um, I always like to refer to one thing I saw in the volume, but before that, I'll introduce this very printing. This volume went through many different printings, and this is certainly not the first printing. This one was printed in the year 1796 to 1797 in a city called Zhovkva. Zhovkva today doesn't go by that name. It goes by the name of Zhovkva or Zhovkva in the Ukraine, in western Ukraine. And the printer was Mordechai Rubenstein, who was he was an acquaintance and somebody who knew the famous Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev. He was to print books in Berdichev at a later time. And one thing I find interesting about this print is that this was the year of the third partition of Poland and was the final blow to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which the city got its name. And that was something that was going on at this time. This was a big deal. And parts of Germany, Poland, and Russia began to partition the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Um, So that's enough said about that. I will just mention one thing which he says, and it's inside the book. This one doesn't have numbers, so it doesn't have a page number. However, there's one thing he points out as to the name of this holiday, Purim. It's called Purim. Pur is explained in the Megillah itself. The lot, Haman cast a lot on the Jewish people, and Rabbi Eliezer Ashkenazi comments that the enemies of the Jews don't usually cast lots. That's something out of the ordinary. That's maybe why we call it by that name. Nebuchadnezzar did not cast lots on the Jewish people. He fought a war of attrition and won. And the other enemies of the Jews also did not cast lots. Yet Haman cast lots. He cast three lots, one for the day of the month, one for the month, and one for the year that he was to destroy the Jewish people. So there were three, and that's why it's called this holiday of Purim, the holiday of the lots in plural, because there were three. And that is to teach us about a special enemy of the Jewish people, an enemy called Haman, which is different than the other enemies and should be distinguished as a special enemy. Uh, I always like to refer to that because that's very important as to know why is this holiday called after the lots. After all, there were a lot of different innovations that happened to the Jewish people during this holiday. Much of the oral Torah was given during this time in history. Um, there was a greater friendship and bond across the Jewish people that happened on this holiday, but we only refer to the lots of the enemy to call after this holiday, and that is something remarkable where we're pointing out the exact difference of this enemy as to the other enemies of the Jewish people. So that is something in this book I thought that I would open to the exact page and show you my historic edition, printed in Zhovkva in 1797. This was something that was really studied and learned, and people would really dissect the Megillas Esther using this book. This is one of the great commentaries on the Megillas Esther. That is the first I wanted to show. My second volume is something that does not look very remarkable from the outside, and it's got tape on the front, tape on the spine, and a regular vinyl case. And this binding is comes from one of the volumes of Mikros Gedolos that was printed in the 1990s by Machon HaMaor, which is a very common book. You can find it in any Jewish bookstore. And it struck me that this is kind of like a costume. People wear costumes on Purim. It's almost like this book is in a costume. Why is it in a costume? Because just by looking at the edges, you can see that the pages are actually just look like historic paper. It looks old. Opening up the volume, it truly is old. This is a piece of a printing of the Bible, the Chumash, which was to accompany the Chumash, printed in the city of Riva di Trent in the way north of Italy, the year 1560, 1561. And this is a rare piece of that Bible, which is not, does not survive on many of those printed editions. And this is the five scrolls, the five Megillos, which accompanies those Bibles. It's a very fascinating edition, and the history is also very important, as Hebrew printing was prohibited in mainland Italy at this time, and the printers had to escape, and some of the different I would say even undercover printing that they did was in a place called Sabbionetta, and then this was the second place, in a place called Riva di Trento. Lots of Hebrew books were printed in this area, and it was a time of a lot of productivity for these printers, despite all the odds. They printed in a village that's very north in the Alps, very north of Italy, in the southern Alps, but in the Alpine region. And this volume is one of my older Bibles, or my older Chumashim or Megillos. And on the side it has the commentary of Rabbi Yitzchak Arama, the Akeda, who had not lived that much before the printing of this volume, and the Targum and Rashi. And this one puts Esther first for a reason I have not figured out, because usually it goes in chronological order. It starts with Shir Shirim. But this is one of those that puts Esther first. And it's a very early edition for the commentary of Rabbi Yitzchak Arama on Esther. Some of the commentary that is called Arama is also his son, Rabbi Meir Arama, on the other scrolls. And this is a rare piece that is to have survived almost 500 years, and it survives in a modern binding with I would say even clumsy electric tape on the sides of it. And I like to say that this one is in a Purim costume, because it's dressed up like a new book, but it's really not. It's a book that's, like I said, is almost 500 years old. It's a very special edition of the Bible. It has different things and different layouts, and it is something that I am really proud of. So anyway, I want to wish you all a happy Purim, and I hope you enjoyed.